hello everyone. I was just musing that Spency is now 2.5, and it was just occurred to me how relatively trouble-free the terrible twos were for us. In fact, I feel like we got off very easily. And I was thinking about this, and I thought there's probably a few explanations for why that might be. The first and most obvious one would be perhaps we're lucky and perhaps he's just temperamentally not like that. I thought another thing that probably played a role is that I suspect that the terrible twos for many children is actually more about that 2 is the age where their parents tend to think about or have another child. And so for many kids, the terrible twos is possibly just largely a reaction to the new baby and a lack of attention that they're getting paid, or a reduction in the amount of attention that they're getting from their parents. So I thought that was a big possibility, and the fact that we haven't had another child means that Spency hasn't had to deal with that yet. But I also thought that I wondered if partly it was my approach to his sort of tantruming behaviours that may have played a role in keeping them fairly minimal. And I just want to talk a little bit about what my philosophy is around tantrums and things like that. And I guess a lot of this is informed by my past work that I've done as a counsellor. And so my philosophy is that emotions are a core part of the human experience, and I really don't like the idea of positive and negative emotions, and that this sort of fairly common social view that we should try and get rid of or minimise the amount of negative emotions that we feel. I think a much more sort of much more grounded in the reality of what it means to be human is to recognise that all emotions are, at least almost all emotions are just a part of being human, and that it's trying to disavow them or get rid of them that actually causes problems emotionally. And so when applying this to Spence, I guess my philosophy is that when he gets angry, when he's upset, when he's frustrated or sad, that's a perfectly reasonable response for him to have. Although there may be good reasons why he can't have what he wants, although it might seem to an adult to be absolutely trivial things that he's getting incredibly upset over. I guess my approach has always been to see this as a perfectly normal developmental thing for him to be doing, and that in fact actually I can't help but relate to him. When he can't have what he wants, he gets incredibly frustrated and angry, and I can't help but understand that. I often feel the same way. Now, I don't act in the same way necessarily, I don't throw screaming tantrums, but the emotion is the same, and often the intensity of it. I just have a much more of a capacity to repress my emotions and not express them. What does this mean? The other thing that I guess I've found when talking to other parents and stuff is that this idea that when a child, toddler wants something he can't have. Spencer wants to play with the bread knife. And I say no, and he has a tantrum. That I think a lot of parents get stuck in a false dichotomy where they feel that either their denial is reasonable, and that means that the child has no right to get upset, or their denial is unreasonable, and therefore if the child is has every right to be upset, then that must mean they have to give in. And I think this is a real false dichotomy, and I've tried to tread the line down the middle, which is to say that there is no way he's going to get what he wants in that situation. And frequently I'll say no to him on things which aren't even about life and limb. I will make a decision and say no, he can't have that, or we're not going to do this, or whatever, or it's time to go to bed. And he'll have a big tantrum, and there's no way that's going to change my mind. Once I've consistency is so important that once I've said no, that's it. On the other hand, I can completely understand how frustrating that is for him. And I can sympathise with that, or empathise if you like. And so I don't abandon him or chuck him in, put him in timeout and say, no, you go over there and, until you stop crying. I'll stay with him and I'll cuddle him and I'll help him to understand what he's feeling and how that's, a completely normal response. So that means I spend a lot of time holding him, sort of saying, I can, Spencer's angry because he, doesn't want to go to sleep and it's sleepy time. And Dad said no. And I can see, you're very angry. And sometimes even that means sort of saying, Spencer, who are you angry with? And he'll say, Dad. I'll say, you're angry at Dad because Dad said no. And and all the while we might be hugging. Sometimes he's having a complete tantrum and he's trying to hit me and kick me and stuff, and so I'll just try and sit near him so that I'm still present. Sometimes he'll tell me to go away, at which point I'll just go away. But the idea there is that he has the firm consistency of knowing that when I say no, that means no. But at the same time, when he gets upset, I'm not going to abandon him. That is not an aspect of him that I'm rejecting, that I'm completely accepting of his frustration and his anger. And I'm helping him to work his way through that so that these feelings don't overwhelm him. He doesn't feel like these are negative things that he shouldn't be feeling, but these are just normal responses to not being able to get what you want in life. And so I guess my thinking is that maybe part of the reason why we haven't had, the dreadful, terrible twos of the stereotypical toddler is partly because by encouraging him to express himself like that and accepting those emotions, that they're not as strong and overwhelming for him, and they don't, the small tantrums don't escalate to big tantrums. So that's what I was thinking. Maybe we'll talk a bit more about that next time. I hope everybody else is having a great time, and I'll see you later.